My apologies to JK, but yes, Hauss Hejny is still the second fastest Cowboy in the entire Oklahoma State roster. And yes, he evidently still competing to not be QB2. Regardless of who takes the first snap of the season, at least we have the packaging names figured out now.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Oldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially now with football season right around the corner. It is time for you to visit the FanDuel app and start planning your future bets right now. Get with FanDuel.com today. Meanwhile, we get to shift back into this quarterback conversation. Whenever you have a quarterback battle, that is going to grab a lot of headlines. And yes, people had sent me some things about an Oklahoma reporter, News Channel 5 or 9, something to that effect, was discussing how the intel he's getting and the information that he's receiving is that Hauss Hejny is in fact going to be the day one starter against UT Martin. And that very well may be the case, right? To my knowledge, it was Hauss Hejny and Garrett Rangel splitting reps in the spring. And then coming into the fall, Hauss Hejny was QB1. And up until this previous Sunday, he was continuing to be QB1. They gave Zane an opportunity this previous Sunday. And it appeared as though that Zane was likely to hold on to that spot. But evidently, there's some stuff matriculating out there that Hauss Hejny is not only still in contention, but perhaps he's jumped back above Zane for that coveted QB1 position. Regardless of whom is going to take the first snaps against UT Martin on the 28th, we've known about the Zane train. The Zane train has been a thing for quite some time now, and it's been building steam, right? Pun intended. But behind him, we didn't know what we were going to get in Hauss Hejny. All we knew that he was super fast and he was super athletic and he had crazy movement out in the open field. Then we were able to put it into context and going over some of the top times from their high school days and even some of them that had some of the miles per hour and 40 times at their previous schools if they were to transfer in. And that led us to believe that Hauss Hejny was either going to be the fastest or the second fastest player on the roster. Turns out he is still the second fastest, but there's an adjustment to who's number one. We'll save some of that for segment 2. But the Hauss Hejny package that I saw the best by far on social media came from Nick the Geek on X. He said this should be the hot sauce package. And I completely agree. So if you have the same train rolling into town, you can sprinkle in some hot sauce anytime you need some extra yardage, short yardage, red zone situations. No matter what, and no matter who takes the first snap this season, I think Oklahoma State fans should feel pretty comfortable because if Hauss Hejny is in fact going to be the dude that takes the first snaps and maybe inevitably ends up being the primary guy as opposed to Zane Flores, that means he absolutely earned it, right? There's a reason that the Oklahoma State coaching staff decided to choose Zane Flores and Hauss Hejny over the retention of Garrett Rangel and Milwaukee Smith, both of whom showed in the previous season that they were more capable in a multitude of areas over somebody like an Alan Bowman. But regardless, the Zane train has had this name for quite some time because the excitement level has been continuously building, right? I always point to one of my last conversations with Leon Johnson in regards to why did you want to come back to Oklahoma State for that extra redshirt year so bad? And he kept saying, because I want to play with Zane. That dude is special. The way he goes about his business, the way he throws the ball, the way he can understand the playbook. He was saying that Zane Flores is just a different cat. That's why he was really excited to come back for an additional year. So ever since then, my Zane train interest had been piqued. And then naturally, when they decided to bring in Hauss Hejny and Garrett primarily compete at QB1 in the spring, and then Hauss enters fall as QB1, only to potentially give some way to Zane Flores along the way, to now potentially the fact that he may have catapulted himself back above the Zane. Here's the deal, regardless. From my understanding, right, Hauss is a gamer. Hauss is a J.W. Walsh style absolute dude. The only real difference between him and Zane, other than the size factor, right, Zane being 6'3", 220 pounds, is Hauss had a propensity at times to scramble around and kind of rush his decision-making and kind of put the ball up in a slightly precarious situation. And Zane evidently was doing that a little bit less, which is why he was given some more QB1 opportunities as of this previous week. But from this previous Monday until now, obviously things could have very much changed. And I think that's a great sign for Oklahoma State. No matter who wins the job, no matter who takes the first snaps, no matter who ends up with the most snaps there towards the end of the season, I think it does make the most amount of sense that there's going to be some semblance of a 2-quarterback system, at least for the first couple of weeks. And some of this could very well be that, there's some gamesmanship happening. Like, no disrespect to UT Martin, but UT Martin lost a decent number of their top players from this previous season. So the team that won 4 straight conference titles is probably not the same UT Martin that unfortunately is going to begin their season in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So maybe whoever starts game 1 is systematically not going to start game 2. I have no idea. As it pertains to the exact who's going to take the first snaps and who's going to take the snaps in game 2, I don't know. But I do know that it makes sense that both of these dudes play. And I also think that it makes a ton of sense that we try to give Oregon something that they cannot take into consideration before that game, right? So whether it be different wrinkles from the play calling system or different alignments that we want Oregon to pay a little bit of extra attention to, whether it be packaging or the individual dudes, at the end of the day, what matters is if Hauss Hejny is QB1 in Stillwater, America, that means a considerable amount because the staff has been extremely high on Zane Flores the entire time. And again, they didn't go with the quote-unquote safe picks. I'm not saying that Garrett Rangel, Milwaukee Smith were 7 to 8 win dudes, but it seems as though the coaching staff kind of felt that way. And they kind of felt like Zane Flores and Hauss Hejny have higher ceilings. So Zane Flores and Hauss Hejny could potentially get Oklahoma State in that 9 to 10 win category. The more I hear about practice, the more I hear about the intensity and the fact that they're having to compete for their spots and compete for jobs and compete to even be on the roster. Because if you're not doing what you're supposed to do and you're not showing it out on the football field, you can be designated as a DSA. And if you're a DSA, then you don't have, automatic scholarships and things of that nature. So there is a system in Stillwater that if you do not do what you're supposed to do on a daily basis and also take care of business on the football field, that you could get bumped down to a very sketchy spot, no matter where you came from, how much you're getting paid. And I think that's going to be more visible than anywhere at the quarterback position. Both of these dudes were very sought after. Both of these dudes could have gone almost anywhere to have a transfer portal moment or even coming out of high school. But they chose to stay at Oklahoma State. The coaching staff chose to ride into 2025 100% on them. They took out the safe plays in Garrett Rangel and Milwaukee Smith, and they decided to go for the higher ceiling. But this has been a Zane train thing happening for quite some time now. So if Hauss Hejny does, in fact, leapfrog Zane once again, that's because he absolutely 100% earned it. And that's what has me the most excited. I don't necessarily care who takes the first snaps because at the end of the day, they're both going to play probably a decent amount against UT Martin, and they're both going to provide some things that is specifically designed to give Oregon some extra eye candy. Whether we're actually going to implement it or use it or completely get rid of it, that's the point, is Oregon's not going to know either. So we could have Oregon preparing for maybe Hauss Hejny and Rodney Fields, and then we could show up and they roll out Zane Flores and Trent Howland or Zane Flores and Caleb Hicks. I mean, they could even get really creative and bring both of them into the fold. I think that would be phenomenal. And Zane did play RB3. I know I bring this up all the time. He was the official depth chart RB3 last spring after a couple of running back injuries. You don't put somebody at that spot if you don't think he can at least be somewhat competent about giving the defense a decent look. So the idea of having Hauss Hejny and Zane Flores and Sam Jackson V, who was a quarterback at TCU, a quarterback at Cal, Then he switched to wide receiver at Auburn. I mean, you go back and look some of his highlights. Some of his better highlights as a quarterback at TCU was unfortunately against Oklahoma State, where I think he put up like 250, 260-ish, 100 yards against the Cowboys as a QB. So that would be a fun package to have. If you look in the backfield, you got Hauss Hejny, Zane Flores, and Sam Jackson V. You don't know what's coming. And if you were to sprinkle some Gavin Freeman into that equation as well, or Caleb Hicks, or Rodney Fields, or Assesi Valahi, I do think that there's a number of things that we can do in the first couple of weeks to make things more difficult on our opposition. But the only way we can pull that off is with the athleticism, with the upgrade in talent, with the upgrades in speed. But we have that. And yes, Hauss Hejny, no matter what happens, right now, he's still the second fastest player on the Oklahoma State roster, which would put him at the upper percentile for the fastest players in the country, point blank period, at any position. But evidently, he ain't the fastest. So we got a clarification there. We also need to clarify that you need to get with FanDuel today. August 26th is officially the FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who've always yearned for bold prediction and big-time preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long-shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champion right away, before week one even kicks off, this is your time, this is your place, this is your tournament. So take a flyer on the MVP race or crown your champion in August, or parlay your division winner dark horses. Do it by going to FanDuel today and start planning your future bets right now, because the Future Day is a one-day, one-time only event just for you. Do not miss out on this opportunity to have the most fun in the betting industry that you can physically possibly have with FanDuel. This is your time, your day, your game. Make some crazy magic happen by going to FanDuel.com or getting into the FanDuel app today. So yes, whenever you looked at all of the times that are available on athleticneck.com and MileStat, and then if you go back and look at some of the research that other schools have done, like Hauss Hejny being clocked at over 21.75 miles per hour at TCU, or Jaylen Lloyd being clocked at over 22 miles an hour at Nebraska, where he also ran a 4.440 at Nebraska. They didn't give an exact number, so it could have been a 4.42, 4.45, 4.46. We know that Hauss Hejny ran a 4.46 before going to TCU. You would imagine that something in the speed department has upticked, and I think this is validation, because Hauss is still the second fastest Cowboy on the roster, but it is not Jaylen Lloyd who is the fastest. The dude who is a 2022 national track champion in long jump, who also finished third in the nation in the 100-meter, that dude is not faster than Hauss Hejny or J.K. Johnson. J.K. Johnson, the former Ohio State consensus four-star All-American that then went to LSU, saw some very, very meaningful minutes at LSU, and then dealt with some injuries and kind of lost his spot at the depth chart, now has an opportunity to kind of revamp his career and get back to that borderline five-star status. Now, if you look at J.K. Johnson originally coming up through the recruiting ranks, he was a consensus four-star by 247, had him as a 95 overall, 72nd best player in the entire country, number one player out of Missouri, and they're right up from 247, right when he committed to Ohio State, or right before he committed to Ohio State, was solid length, but still needs to add weight and fill in. Has great twitch and change of direction, shows good burst to the ball and good ball skills. Despite still having some room to fill in physically, he is a very physical player who will support the run and play physically. He shows experience and cover in both man and zone defenses. He has seen some good competition in high school, and as long as he adds the weight and strength necessary, he's projected to be a multi-year Power 5 starter. So naturally, he takes those high accolades, and he was getting recruited by everybody, right? The Oregons, the LSUs, the Ohio States, the Clemsons, and he ultimately decided to go to Ohio State. And he had originally got some playing time. Anytime you're a true freshman that gets playing time, it's a very big deal. Even if it's just the 4-game allotment that they give you before your ineligible for a red shirt, even if it's just that 4-game minimum. There's a significant number of freshmen that never even get to that level, that don't get those full 4 starting games or 4 games being played that early on. All right, so fast forward a little bit. J.K. Johnson decides that he's going to transfer from Ohio State to LSU. And then NFL Draft Buzz did a write-up on him. In 2021, the freshman Johnson saw action in a total of 8 snaps playing cornerback for Ohio State, recorded a tackle while also adding a stop. Coverage, Johnson notched no pass breakups, no picks, was a QB targeted rating of 95.8. As a sophomore, he played 10 games, logged 406 snaps for Ohio State. He made 19 tackles, had 5 stops in coverage, and was a QB rating target of 143. The scouting report: a coordinated athlete with good framework and balance, a heady cover player with above average feel and anticipation in space, has explosive movement skills and a fluid athleticism and change of direction ability to come down and cover slot receivers. Trusts his eyes with very good awareness, has very good reaction skills, and breaks on the ball quickly. Alert defender for zone coverage, showing good understanding of route progressions occurring behind him and quick burst downhill to break on underneath passes. It goes on and on. That's his weaknesses. Coming into the draft buzz at LSU. Needs to be better in press coverage because he's better in that than off coverage. When Johnson can look shaky and unsure when transitioning out of his back pedal, he'll give up some throws underneath because of this. His appetite for crashing down against the run came and went in college, and he is likely to get walled off easily by bigger receivers. AKA, he was very aggressive, was very involved in the run game, was a heavy hitter at Ohio State, goes to LSU, and he's not as aggressive. He doesn't come downhill as heavy. He doesn't start tackling dudes in the backfield as much. He's more of a coverage dude. And then lastly, NFL quarterbacks may take advantage of his aggressiveness and man and zone to eye up short routes to go over the top. So to get better in press coverage, you have to have more speed, right? That's something that Corey Black was actually good at, was his recovery speed. So sometimes he would get burnt, but he utilized that 4.3, 5.40 speed to get back into the action by the time the ball was actually coming down. And if a wide receiver made the cardinal sin of showing his hands too early, then that allowed Corey Black to kind of get back involved with the play. It seems as though that has been answered, right? The players were asked and polled who the fastest players were. J.K. Johnson received most of the votes. And then right behind him was Hauss Hejny. There were some other players mentioned that, Daniel Berry, we haven't talked about in a while. He was the dude that came over from flag football that did play actual organized football as well, culminating with like a 740-yard season recently. Kobe Foreman was mentioned as one of the faster players on the team alongside LaDainian Fields, which I did have somebody from his camp reach out to me and say, hey, you do realize that LaDainian was running a sub 10.5 when I did all my 100-meter times. So I had to make sure to include him in this. And then, the Daniel Berry name keeps being mentioned. And then you get to Jaylen Lloyd. So the dude who was already verified, certified, one of the top 3 fastest runners in the United States of America in high school, that dude went to Nebraska, put on 22 pounds, seemingly got faster, got clocked at over 22 miles an hour, comes to Oklahoma State, goes to the body by glass system, and he's not the fastest player on the team anymore. That is miraculous work. So J.K. Johnson, at one point in time, was a consensus 4-star, hovering on that almost 5-star line that literally could have played anywhere in the country, that was getting draft buzz very, very early on in his career. You're playing that many snaps. His second year at Ohio State, playing 409 snaps. His first year at LSU. It looked like it was all going to line up. And then he comes to Oklahoma State. And now, according to Cam Epps, a safety for Oklahoma State, said that J.K. Johnson is the fastest player on the field, and he's probably running a 4.3. And there is no time verification of that. But if we know that Hauss Hejny was running a 4.46 2 years ago, and we know that Jaylen Lloyd was running a 4.4 2 years ago, winning national championships, being the 3rd fastest 100-meter time in America, and now Hauss Hejny is faster than that, and J.K. Johnson's even faster than all of them, that tells me that he is not only taking this season at Oklahoma State very seriously, but the questions from NFL Draft Buzz were about his ability to get the closing speed necessary to win in man coverage in the NFL. They were worried about him getting walled off by big receivers because he wasn't being tenacious or aggressive or mean enough to get in on the tackling. And obviously, lastly, the NFL quarterbacks could take advantage of some of those issues. He took that to heart. He's taking it seriously. The body by glass system has opened up a different level for J.K. Johnson. And then he has Jules Montanore. I think Jules Montanore might end up being the biggest gem of this class. I think Ryan Osborne might have something to say about that. But the same could be said about Cap Dede, Ryan McNamara. But I'm pretty confident that since J.K. Johnson has answered the calling this way, he clearly has something to prove. And we've talked a lot about Jalen Davies because Jalen Davies started the last 2 years at UCLA, put up some pretty impressive stats. Coming to Oklahoma State was a very big deal for Jalen Davies. But J.K. Johnson's almost like one of the forgotten dudes. One of those guys that was classified coming out of high school as a multi-year Power 4 starter at the highest of levels. He's done a little bit of that. But then he had an injury. Then he lost a spot on the depth chart. Now he's coming to Oklahoma State, and he's gotten bigger and significantly faster. And he might be CB3. He might not even start over Jalen Davies or Cam Smith. And we're having this conversation about J.K. Johnson being faster than Hauss Hejny. And when you're talking about very small incremental levels of timing, the difference between a 4.35 and a 4.45, it's a decent amount. But on a football field, it's pretty crazy to think that in pads, we've got several dudes hitting 22 miles an hour. I'm telling you, we may not beat Oregon, but they darn sure better be ready for a shot in the mouth from the very beginning of the ball game. We all need to be ready. There's a lot of things at your house that you could potentially be getting prepared for as college football season is almost here. Summer's winding down, and there's something nice about getting back to a routine, right? Wayfair is going to make it easy for you to set yourself up for the best routine and season ahead. From bedding to linens to storage solutions for every single room inside and outside, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. This is a perfect time to get your home stuff ready for the football season, whether it's organizing, upgrading, trying to add a new workspace, or making weeknight dinners easier. I know that we've got some plans to do some stuff down in the basement. Don't exactly know what that is, but I do know that Wayfair can help us get it all sorted and squared away. So get organized, get refreshed, and get back into the routine that you love for way less. Head on over to Wayfair.com right now to shop all the things you need inside and outside of your home. That is Wayfair.com, Wayfair.com. Head on over to Wayfair, where they have every single style for every single home. All right, lastly, but definitely not least, David Taylor absolutely steals a Minnesota commit. Top 40 prospect in America, Michael White, flips from Minnesota to Oklahoma State. Very big deal. I know Ivan White and Taylor Skeens have both been putting out some pretty cool Sports Illustrated articles y'all need to go check out. One of the ones that Mr. Skeens recently put out was catching up with Michael White. The best comment from that, or quote from that, was Michael White telling Mr. Skeens, "I will be a national champion." And it's probably realistic. It's not just him saying that. He's projected to be in the 197-ish pound range. But here's the miraculous part. He got second in state in Indiana last year. He got sixth in state his first year ever in his life of wrestling. And now he's, 3 years into this whole thing, and he's already in the top 40 in the country. He stormed through Fargo, finishing third at 190 pounds with a 7-1 record, including 5 tech falls. His impressive performance at U.S. Open 17s was something that naturally was going to kind of get him to a much bigger, better potential destination. And I'm not putting down Minnesota. Traditionally, Minnesota is a heavy hitter of wrestling, so I 100% get it. But don't let the number 40 rank fool you. Because Michael White, just go look at, you don't have to be a wrestling expert. I'm definitely not a wrestling expert at all. I've watched enough to understand, right, how the points go and when you're putting yourself in a bad spot, things of that nature. But whenever you go watch Michael White, it doesn't make sense. Like, his movements are different. The way he gets, into a high crotch, it's really different. The way he fakes people with his feet and then utilizes his upper body to swing his legs underneath. Like, it's just stuff you don't see. You don't see the moves and the way that he positions his hips and his legs very often because he's new to the sport. He's essentially been learning on the fly. Now, of course, he's had some top-notch training, or he wouldn't go from not wrestling to 3 years later being a top 40 wrestler in America, getting offers from the top colleges in America, right? That doesn't happen. But to only be wrestling for a little over 3 years and to already have these really unique moves that aren't normal because he hasn't been wrestling his entire life. More often than not, if you're going to get to this level, you've been wrestling since you were 3 years old. You've been competing in tournaments all across the country your entire life. Matter of fact, you've been competing against a lot of the same dudes for 10, 11, 12 years type thing before you even get in a position to be in college. So the technical aspects are learned from a very young age. And not all, but a decent number of the moves are comparable across the board. There's been new iterations of moves, of course, but teaching different mechanical ways to score points, there's a way to do it. And there's only typically a handful of movements that you can teach somebody that they can make transferable onto the mat. That's why Michael White is so intriguing. And I'd imagine that's something that David Taylor looked at. Like, you can watch just a little bit of this dude and be like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he's trying to do, but it works. And it works on the opponents too, because you could tell even the opponents are like, what are you trying to do? And then all of a sudden he swooped in, you've got a leg in the air, you're going down on the mat. And before you can even register what he was even trying to do, he's already scoring. And you're already trying to get yourself out of being pinned or tech fall. So I'd imagine David Taylor looked at this and said, I need that guy. I'm the magic man. I'm the dude who creates wild positions. I'm the dude who creates even further chaos whenever you have two dudes kind of rolling around. I'm that guy. So I need to teach the dude who already has some out-of-the-box moves. I need to take what he's doing naturally and try to incorporate it into traditional moves. That's what's going to make Michael White so intriguing. So, yeah, number 40, I wouldn't pay attention to it. We have the number 2 big board best wrestler in America, which I think most would argue should be number 1 by now, but that's Jax Force. You have number 4 in America, Deshaun Ross. Number 5 in America, Jordan Rainey. Number 6 in America, Jaden Rainey. Number 36 in the country, Kellen Wolbert. Now you have number 40 in the country, Michael White, to go with number 100 in the country, Rockland Zinklin. This class for 2026 is absolutely wild, and he might be the belle of the ball. With as good as Jax Forrest is, with as good as the Rainey twins are, Mike White might have the most upside of all of them because his ascension has been pretty miraculous very, very early on in a sport that typically takes years and years and years and years of grinding to even get close to this level and these kind of offers and these kind of performances. So it's an exciting one. But anywho, that's all we're going to have this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't, that's okay too. More importantly, My podcast people out there, you're everything to make this work. So appreciate what you do. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, taters.